Så där, klockan är slagen. Varmt välkomna till det här seminariet med fokus på internationella erfarenheter av Business Improvement District eller på svenska, ett bättre uttryck kanske, platssamverkan. Jag heter Magnus Lindgren och är generalsekreterare för Stiftelsen Tryggare Sverige. Och som en del av er vet så driver ju vi sedan ett par år ett nationellt kunskapscentrum om just platssamverkan, där vi hjälper fastighetsägare och kommuner att initiera och utveckla men också driva platssamverkan för att skapa säkra, trygga och attraktiva offentliga miljöer. Just nu är vi på ett 10-tal platser i landet, från Helsingborg i söder till Dalarna i norr, så inte riktigt halva Sverige, men ändå. Idag så ska vi blicka ut, vi ska vända ner till Sydafrika, till Storbritannien och till USA för att se vilka internationella erfarenheter finns det egentligen när det kommer till platssamverkan. Jag kommer nu gå över till engelska och introducera våra deltagare här. So, welcome everyone. We have some participants with us. We're waiting for one, I think, still. Welcome, Kati Solomon, you're Vice President of Operations in Bryant Park, and also to Derek Bock, Chief Operation Officers from South Africa, and we are waiting for Peter Williams from Great Britain. So today we're going to talk about Business Improvement District, and you have been working with both in New York and in South Africa for quite a few years. In a Swedish perspective, it's quite new, but it's drawing a lot of attention right now, and many developers and municipalities are very interested in questions related to Business Improvement District. So to start off it, you will have about 20 minutes each, and Kati, the floor is yours, so please present yourself and give a picture of how you've been working for the last 20 years maybe with Business Improvement Districts in New York.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share some slides about Bryant Park and BIDs. But before I do, I will note that a lot of the photos are before COVID. So things are kind of warming up again and getting a little bit back to normal actually within the last month. All New Yorkers have access to the vaccine at this point, and subway's getting busier. Midtown is getting busier, but for the last year it had been pretty much emptied out. Our staff was still around, but it definitely didn't look like these pictures. So it is a bit of an anomaly, and I'm going to talk about kind of normal. Happy to answer questions about COVID, but just when you see the photos, I wanted to make that note. So I wanted to give you an idea of what Bryant Park looks like on a beautiful, busy day. It's a lush green landscape surrounded by skyscrapers. It's packed with people. We could have 3,000, 5,000 people at once having lunch, doing activities, and it's a pretty dynamic space, but it didn't always look that way. Prior to our work, it looked something like this. It was managed by the city, and in the 70s and 80s, they were experiencing a fiscal crisis, and they abandoned a lot of city services. So there was no cleaning, there was no care of parks, there was less policing, and these spaces were somewhat left to handle themselves. So this kind of sets the stage for the creation of business improvement districts in New York City. And that's when our work began in the, it was building up in the late 80s, and Bryant Park reopened in 1992. So property owners came together to form what we call a business improvement district. They wanted a way to put money back into the public spaces around their buildings because tenants didn't want to be in the buildings because it was so unsafe. Back in these photos, Bryant Park was a haven for crime. There was a lot of drug use, drug selling, attacks on women. Definitely a place you wouldn't want to send your loved ones alone. So business improvement districts are formed and things start to change as you can take back the space, control some of the things like the graffiti and litter, and I'll show you some photos of that. And business improvement districts have really grown. As of last year, there were 75 in the 5 boroughs and 25 in Manhattan alone. We are the green dot in the very center, that's Bryant Park. We also manage the 34th Street Partnership just south of that, which is the blue that you see there. Zooming in on the Bryant Park district, you can see we have, it's just the properties surrounding the one block of Bryant Park. It's a kind of a small business improvement district, but you can see there's all different types of properties. So there's residential, hotel, commercial office space, and these properties pay different assessments. The assessment is the mechanism in which you put money back into the space. So the city requires that these properties pay an assessment. At Bryant Park, it starts at 10 cents a square foot. And it's paid to the city, and then Bryant Park collects the money twice a year from the city. And at 34th Street, the district is a bit larger. It runs from Park Avenue past 9th Avenue. This district comprises the Empire State Building, Madison Square Garden, the giant Macy's department store. It's really at the heart of the city. The assessment at 34th Street is 36 cents a square foot. And it's a little bit higher in this district. At Bryant Park, we've been able to diversify our revenues, whereas at 34th Street, the revenue stream really comes from these assessments paid by property owners. And with that money, we care for the space. We do sanitation, security, flowers, other things like that. I want to pause here to talk about why it's shaped like this, why it's not a perfect box. When business improvement districts are formed, all the property owners have to say whether they want to be in or not. If you're on the edge, you can opt out. These are New York City's rules for business improvement districts. If you are in the center and everyone around you wants to be in, you are forced into the business improvement district. So I want to show you some before and afters from Bryant Park. This was before our work. These high hedges actually served as a hiding place to do all of these bad things, drug selling and inappropriate acts behind those hedges. But this is what it looks like today. You can see we have a sanitation worker, places to sit. It's very well cared for, incredibly maintained. This is the fountain that we saw before. It's not working. There's graffiti. There's nowhere to sit. You can see it's kind of a barren landscape. And this is what that looks like today. If you look closely, you can see the presence of one of our private security officers, many places to sit, and lots of amenities for the public. This is before our work with the city management. You can see there's a broken light pole. The horticulture is not planted. There's, again, nowhere to sit. There's an oil drum being used as a trash can. And this is what that looks like today. You know, we're not only doing the bare minimum, but we're offering classes. That's what that little sign is. There's a brochure rack. There's rules for the space in one of those signs. Seasonal plantings. Again, a before photo, it doesn't look so bad, but when you look at today, you can see the change in potential because there is a business improvement district there. There's a putting green, and that's a sponsored kiosk. So we have some food and drink there, and we're also making money from the sponsorship in that space. Again, this is a before, really not an inviting space, and that's what it looks like today after a business improvement district was initiated. Just looking at crime before business improvement districts started in these areas to now. This is 34th Street, but the story is very much the same in Bryant Park. Crime has plummeted. These are all crimes taking place in these years, from violent crimes to petty crimes. And in Bryant Park, we employ 3 levels, I would say, of security measures. So of course we have our private security, you saw a photo before, and they're enforcing quality of life crimes, public urination, loud music, things like that, to keep the place civil. We start with that. If there's a more serious incident, they will call the New York Police Department, but they try to handle it themselves. We also have our Sanitation Force, which we believe is part of keeping order. They remove graffiti, stickers, they keep it clean. They make it look like a cared for space where you can't do bad things. And then we also have all of these activity areas that have hourly staff. A lot of them are working summer jobs, and we call them games hosts. I would say they're our first line of defense. They're eyes on the street. They're enforcing rules at the ping pong tables, like respect your fellow players. And this is kind of the very first line of defense in keeping order and keeping it a safe and inviting space for all. Another proof that business improvement districts are very successful in New York, at Bryant Park, these are 2 skyscrapers that were built in the last 20 years on Bryant Park. The real estate is so valuable that they had to tear down the buildings that were there previously and build these giant skyscrapers because so many people, so many tenants wanted to be here and pay for this Class A office space. And then the final example I'll show you is kind of an economic argument for business improvement districts. This is from the Grace Building, which is along the park on 42nd Street. So this building pays a little over 10 cents a square foot into the business improvement district. And they told us that they can charge their tenants $15 more a square foot because the business improvement district is there, because Bryant Park is there. When you look at how that multiplies for their annual rent and then the value of the building, the case for a business improvement district is very strong, especially from an economic point of view. It does seem like a cost to property owners, but when you think about the value that they are creating for themselves, it's a no-brainer. So that's the last of my slides.
Thank you, Kati. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function to address some questions to Kati. It has been a success story. You can't say anything else during the last 20 years. But I mean, I know that you have said that before, that when you think back to the bad old days, the people who lives in New York today, they don't remember the bad old days. Do you have struggled to get money from the tenants, from the property owners, or is it still a success story?
I would say that the property owners, many of them, so if you lived in New York in the 1980s, you would remember the bad old days. So a lot of them actually do remember. I didn't live here then, but I think that many of the property owners did and do understand how successful Bryant Park is. A lot of the property owners passed the assessment along to their tenants through the rent payments, and tenants, even if they didn't understand where Bryant Park used to be, they understand where it is today and all of the amenities that are out in the space for their tenants. Even if the park wasn't there, because I know that's not the norm for all BIDs, knowing that your tenants are going to walk to work through these safe streets, well lit with security, sanitation, they're not going to arrive to a mess left overnight by people doing bad things. That definitely adds value for the property owners and tenants.
Kati, can you say something about your relationship with the city of New York? I mean, this is a public place, but you are in charge of this public space.
Sure. Bryant Park was one of the first BIDs created. It wasn't the first, but we do have a bit of a special relationship with the city. We have a lot of autonomy. We operate almost completely independently. We have an agreement with them for how we manage, and it's kind of our playbook. So there are certain things that we do have to get approvals for, and they could always come in and ask for more, but as long as we are proving that we're good stewards of the space, they do let us operate without a lot of checks and balances, because we work together to set out what the expectations were in advance. So there are major things like if there's a fire or major police action, the city is going to come in. They do pick up our trash, but we bring it to the street. But they're not looking at event permits for our space because they trust us to do that. And we also have the right to make money in the space. And that's really key, that we can do event deals and sponsorship deals without having them check off every single time, because it allows us to work a lot faster than the city can.
When you think back about to the situation in the beginning of the 90s, you said it was a lot of drag addicts and criminals and prostitutes and drinking in the park. So where are they today? Are they still in the park, or did they move to Times Square? Or
they're still around, I would say. I told you there could be 5,000 people on a beautiful day. We believe the park is safe because we have these people taking care of it, but also because there's a lot of people there. So an empty park with 20 people that are there to do bad things feels very unsafe, but a park with those same 20 people and then 5,000 other people is very well balanced, and we're enforcing rules. So I know they're still around because during COVID, actually, a lot of people were not in Midtown. A lot of people were not in these offices, and the balance did shift back. We did a lot to make sure the park stayed active, even if we only had 1,000 people last summer. But everyone can participate in ping pong. So if you're, as long as you follow the rules, it doesn't matter if you are a drug addict or something like that. Just don't do it here.
And was it 2 years ago that you visited us in Stockholm? 1.5, 2 years ago. And I knew that you knew a little bit about the situation in Sweden and in Stockholm. You have been here. So what's your recommendation if you should give some advice to a municipality or to a property owner who wants who is interested to start a BID in Sweden?
I think that the government has to work with the property owners to make a realistic understanding of how these things can be set up. In New York City, there's a city agency responsible for oversight of business improvement districts. It's called Small Business Services, and they are still working with neighborhoods to create BIDs. It's happening every year in New York still. Most of the major commercial districts are already covered, but you can create new ones as areas grow. And there is a kind of a rule book that says how you create it. You have to talk to the property owners. But I think it was a good situation that, so of course there's a rule book now, but it wasn't always like that. And it got there with the first BIDs starting. And I think it's really just about the cooperation and building that understanding.
You have a legislation in New York, for example, a BID legislation. Do you think it's possible to do what you have done during these years without legislation as you have? And maybe you could just say a few words about the legislation.
Sure. I think it's ideal if you have legislation because it forces the property owners to pay that assessment. And in 34th Street, that's the majority of our budget. If you don't have the legislation, you can do a voluntary district. We actually were involved in, there's a newer business improvement district. If you're familiar with New York, it's around the meatpacking district in Chelsea. We used to be involved there. It was a voluntary payment association. It only worked because there were about 5 property owners. We only had to get the agreement of 5 people, 5 heads of these companies. If there had been many more, that voluntary is very hard. And even with the 5, we had to chase payments. And those are really essential to making sure you have those services that are the heart of these districts.
We have some questions, I think. We have one question here for you, Kati. A question I was like this: what will attract new tenants to the area before it's built? And all that is seen is an area with a bad reputation, a new one that seems to care.
I think it's definitely a process. Ours was a slow process. In Bryant Park, we talk about there were 4 phases of this, where the first thing we did was clean it up and put in security, so that there would immediately, you would see the change, that it was clean. And you may not know it was safe, but if you did visit, or word spread that it was safe. So the first thing that happened was the vacancy rate started to drop slowly. The second thing that happened was not only did vacancy rates drop, but it became a more desirable area, and the caliber of tenants kind of rose and changed as confidence was regained. And then the final is that, they're building new buildings, like I showed you, because it's such a hot area where everyone wants to be. So really the baseline is sanitation and security. You have to have that. I see one more question about the tenants being involved in the BID, stores and cafe. So the legislation and the relationships are with the property owners, and the property owners can involve their tenants in different ways. We create relationships with the tenants where it's where it's a mutually advantageous relationship. So I'm trying to think of a good example. We've had people, so Bank of America has a office on the park, and they are a sponsor of our ice rink because they want to put back into the neighborhood. They want to have their name out there. We charge them to do that. We're allowed to do that. The city allows us to have those relationships and make that money. So it's mutually advantageous. Smaller examples could be, there's a fitness studio that wants to host classes, and we would love that because it's great advertising for them, and it gives us activity, and we're always trying to activate the park. And then you also asked about cafes. Yes, there's a coffee shop that's on the adjacent to the park, and we have small kiosks in the park, and they actually have a major store and then a small kiosk in the park because of the natural relationship.
You also have a question here, if you see that, Kati, about the security.
Mm-hmm. I'm reading. It says, how often and in what way do you want to use it? It's either a calming or alarming thing to the citizens. Do you have any thoughts on how to create a good feeling? So our security is definitely a friendly presence. They're dressed like security. Their uniforms are meant to look like the New York City police officers, but they are a friendly presence. We have rules posted in the park. So most of what they're enforcing is those rules. It's just, excuse me, please use 1 chair, not 3. Or I'm sorry, can you turn off your music? Other people are trying to enjoy. And it's only going to be alarming if it's an urgent situation. If there's something that has to be handled in an alarming way, we really try to de-escalate. And that's where I talked about the first line is those games hosts who are hourly college students who are just very politely enforcing rules and mutual respect for these areas.
Okay, 2 more questions, and then we have to let Peter present himself. First, you have been in Sweden, you know, it's cold about 10 months a year, and it's dark. And I know that you have a lot of activities in Bryant Park, even during the winter season, winter activities. And I think that you even might have more people visiting the park during the winter season. Can you say just a few words about
Sure.
that?
So we never want the park to be empty. That's one of our defenses against unsafe conditions. So we activate the park 12 months a year. In New York, it gets very cold in December, January, February. We have an ice rink that we put into the park from October. It's now late October to this year. It actually went until April. We extended it to keep the park active because of COVID. It's an outdoor experience, so you are cold, but December is the busiest month in the park. It's busier than the summer when it's warm out. We also have a holiday market. We have a pop-up restaurant. We do curling. We do igloos that you can rent to be with your small group. We also do ice bumper cars. We really have tried to make winter this exciting time, a special time to be in the park. So I don't think the cold should stop you. You just have to make it an attractive space.
But no cub during the winter.
No cub during the winter, just in
winter
summer.
cub, no. And the last question, just, I mean, I think from a Swedish point of view, we like to ask the people what you need, what you want to do. But I know that you don't ask so much, maybe you try. So what doesn't work? Can you say something? What have you tried that didn't work out?
Well, you just mentioned cube, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing wrong, but we did cube on the lawn, on that big lawn I showed you at the beginning, and it destroyed the lawn. That wasn't great. So now we have it on turf in a different area. We always are trying different classes and things, different events, and we usually tweak them. We have accordion concerts, which is a strange instrument, and the way we've done that has changed dramatically. But the key is that we're out there participating and learning from it and always making it slightly better. Just because something doesn't work, we don't say give up. We kind of believe in incremental change and making it slightly better as we go. So we have ping pong tables, and they used to be sitting on a gravel path, and the gravel got dug out by the players' feet, and then it was filled with water, and really just not so when you're playing, you're splashing in a puddle. And we have changed that surface so that it's more of like a playground, active space surface, and always improving it. So that's one example, but there's lots of events that just haven't worked, and we've had to modify and make better.
Okay, thank you very much, Kati. You will come back later for the close-up discussion. So from New York to London, and Peter Williams, welcome, Peter. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you, yes.
Good to see you. Are you sitting home, or are you at the office?
No, I'm still at home, following Mr. Johnson's advice.
Yes. So the floor is yours. Please present yourself, and please give us a picture of how you work with a business improvement district in London, and the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Magnus. And thanks for the opportunity to speak to people today. It's been, a friend of mine says that regeneration takes a generation, and after 21 years involvement with bids, it's a good time to assess whether they've actually come of age. Unfortunately, I missed the start of Kati's, but I must admit I took some inspiration from Bryant Park back in 2000. And the narrative there went something like, the great American cities were in decline, their centers were being hollowed out, the donut effect was taking over. Property owners felt that they needed a new mechanism, and this whole thing about philosophy around mending a broken window. I think the transfer to the UK meant that the model changed somewhat, not least because Kati's just been mentioning there about tenants. And as you appreciate, Magnus, the people who pay the levy in the UK are those tenants. It is occupiers who pay, not the property owners. But there is provision for property owners to become involved, and that's something I'll return to in a moment or two. The reality is that all kinds of places are failing, not just our major cities, small towns and villages. Lots of the work we do with bids are in Wales, where the scale is of a much smaller kind of community. So governance systems, which seem to have served these urban centres for a long time reasonably well, are no longer fit for purpose. Wealthier and more influential voters are often in the suburbs or residential enclaves, and hence it's been difficult to attract sufficient political attention and investment to those centres. I suppose the other thing that is being brought home in the last 20 years or so is that the financial settlement for centres is outmoded. This is typified in the UK by our business rates, which is an arcane way of taxing commercial property. In the era of the internet, it's totally inappropriate and causes the playing field to be anything other than level. Out-of-town shopping centres, their operational promotional budgets far outweigh what's available to traditional town centres. So these centres everywhere, I think, are creaking organisationally. They're starved of resources, and urban populations are growing and pressures grow up with them. So bids are not the answer, but they can be the beginning of one if bid advocates, if their motivations and behaviour remain relevant, and we have managed to avoid partisanship. I'm going to talk a little bit more on the slides about what bids are doing. Just to reflect before that, the differences, I think, between the UK and the US is that one of the things, I think this, Kati can correct me if I'm wrong, but the voting system seems to change between state and state, where it's universal in the UK that you're allowed a 5-year bid term, and then you've got to go back to your electorate and secure another mandate. And this has made British bids very sensitive to what their voters' opinions of them are. So there's a lot of attitudinal sampling of whether we're doing the right thing. And although that's a major drag, and the ballot itself is a major kind of bind on resource and so forth, it does at least keep us relevant on our toes to what our constituency needs. So it goes almost without saying that those bread and butter things, those things which are often referred to as the janitorial things, have got to be looked after, cleansing, security and so forth, and on such a firm base that a more ambitious programme can be built. And I think it's in this transition from those bread and butter things to more ambitious strategic things that lots of bids, especially smaller bids, have struggled. It's a real stretch both for capacity and, dare I say, capability within those bids. And I'm not sure we've immediately got the answer for that. Returning to that issue about who bids are for, much was made in the UK. It was very much a flavour of the time that these things were business-led, and it became a bit of a mantra. I think it is an important consideration, but not in a kind of doctrinal way, if I could put it that way. It's not a question of private good, public bad kind of sense, but rather in that it kind of helps redress a balance the centres, I think, have suffered from, because those are the closest understanding of the way that the centres' performance in economic terms, at least, were excluded from decisions that were critical to the performance of the centres. But by bringing in this new energy enthusiasm from the private sector, new disciplines, new sources of data, fresh drive and enthusiasm, I think it's been a game changer for urban governance. People generally are interested in their town and city centres. Thousands of businesses get involved in their local bids, either on boards or theme groups or whatever. And it's a much more fundamental engagement and participation than there is in other forms of public life in the UK. And I think the reason for that is that bids have got resource. They're actually doing things. It's the things that private sector can relate to. And if they do become talking shops, you know, that would be the end of it. Our chambers of commerce in the UK have a long tradition and are still very, very much around. But I think bids are different in the sense that they have got this amount of money that they can invest immediately, make decisions, act quickly. And I think that's a bit of a game changer. Do they bring a bias? Is there evidence or any kind of selfish gain, self-interest? I think we'd be very foolish to say that wasn't the case. In fact, when we campaign for bids in the UK, we don't put it as a kind of altruism choice. We encourage businesses to make a commercial judgment. Is there a business case for a bid in your area? And the fact is that if people want to work in great places, the attraction and retention of talent depends on that. And great places attract footfall to BTC outlets. So we're all employees, tourists, shoppers, visitors, residents at different moments of our lives. Bids, visions for places should target the points where consensus exists between these perspectives, I think. I'm often asked whether residents should be involved in bid boards. Yes, they should. Whether council members' officers should be, yes, and landowners definitely. Bids need to be the kind of coalition of the willing. And I know, I think it's happened in the UK, it's certainly happened in it's happened in the US and it's certainly happened in the UK now, this move towards TIDs, so-called tourism information districts. And we also got SIDS where the purpose is to amplify the residents' voices. This makes me rather nervous. I think where bids work best is when they are based on a view of total place. And in the introduction of any narrowing in that perspective works against and that and needs to be treated with caution. I've got a few slides I thought I'd share just to illustrate some of those points and probably dwell more on what I spoke earlier about more ambitious strategic things that bids can get by on. So, Erika, are you able to share my slides? Sorry.
Sorry, Erika or Jacob.
Are you able to share my slides?
Yes, I'll share your slides in a sec.
How am I doing for time, Magnus?
It's fine. It's fine. No problem. You have 10 minutes or so, so no problems.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so could I have the next slide? Okay, so no, one back, please. Fine. So I think the starting point for any bid should be a very exact understanding of place. And that involves the collection of data. And we were collecting in a bid in central London called Better Bankside. We were collecting loads of data and it was kind of lying on the hard disk. So one day we decided, well, why not bring it together and put it in a publication? And I've got to say that it's partly inspired by the work of Paul Levy in Philadelphia, who seems to do this better than anybody else, I think. So this publication brought together several disparate sources of data that we were being collected. We put it into one hard copy, but also available online. And it's a publication that worked really, really hard for us. It helped program formation. It attracted inward investment with the development community really taking up the stats from the publication to inform their developments. It helped in the attraction of new commercial occupiers. On the right-hand side of the screen there, you can see the kind of things that we included in the publication, the attitudinal perception surveys, their footfall, crime statistics, cleanliness statistics, all the tourism stuff brought together in one place for the first time. So, difficult exercise in the first instance, but very, very worthwhile in building up a knowledge of the place. Next slide, please. And we kind of fed that into our program formation. And this is a little bit of a graphic to illustrate what I was talking about earlier on. There at the bottom, we've got the so-called core program, the Amenity and Area Management Foundation. And you've got to get that right. And when it comes to the board, it's a question of that we don't get asked about that. It's assumed, that we'd only report on that if there was a problem with it. That's got to work properly. And once that's in place, then you can move up this pyramid and talk about the other services, the other directions that the bid might go. And for lots of places, that might be in a second term. It might take 5 years to get those basic housekeeping measures into place before moving further up into the more strategic realms that you see above the foundation there. Next slide, please. But of course, it's not just a bid that collects statistics. This is a heat map of the area that we're responsible for in central London. And it's reflecting what's called the IMD, the Indices of Multiple Deprivation. And the most deprived, as you can see from the image, are the red areas, and the least deprived are the yellow areas. I think it's interesting, perhaps we managed it in the discussion, which way down the telescope you look when you run a bid. Do you kind of look the wrong way around in the telescope and kind of hone in and focus in on your small area? Or do you take the view that your community, your business community, is part of a bigger construct, and that the context and the hinterland of the bid is as important for your consideration? Your employees and visitors are going to traverse in this area to get to work, to get to your attractions. So is it important that we should be considering those adjoining neighbourhoods as well? And the decision here in Bankside was very much that we should. Next slide, please. So what we've got there is indeed a global riverside area with Tate Modern, Shakespeare's Globe, Borough Market, attracting hundreds of thousands of visitors, or indeed millions of visitors a year. And then as you go back from the riverside, you've got a kind of very successful now commercial community before you go into the more local area where there are smaller businesses and some residential, some university presence. And then you get into that area of large social housing, which is to the south of the bid area. Next slide, please. I'm just kind of looking at that, and we've got insight here from indices such as property values. So that regeneration ripple is moving slowly out in a southerly direction from the River Thames. And it's quite noticeable that at certain points along its path, there is appreciable differences in the way that the values appear. And from that, we took an understanding that the road and rail infrastructure, the big pink lines you can see there, were acting as constraints for social and economic mobility. And the question then was, what, if anything, can you do about this? Because bids, by and large, have not got the resource to invest heavily in infrastructure projects. But what they can do is to deliver tactical interventions, I think, whose significance can go far beyond the level of investment that they've got to put in. Next slide, please. So this is one example. It's the first colourful crossing in the UK. This is a red route. It kind of cuts the area in half. We did some attitudinal sampling along the length of it. People found it a very, very uncomfortable place to walk along and to kind of dally. So this is one of the fun interventions. Next slide, please. This is another, proved very, very, very popular. They've been replicated right across the UK now. Next slide, please. This is one that unfortunately we didn't get away with. It was a step too far for the regulators, I'm afraid. This one, probably my favourite. We would have loved to have done it, but there you are. And next slide, please. This was a collaboration with an American artist. And basically what you're seeing here is the fellow in the picture has managed to walk safely across the road, and as he enters into the spotlight, the loudspeakers above his head burst into applause to congratulate him for getting across such a busy road. And when we did all those, we went back and did our attitudinal sampling, undertaken independently of us through by a university in England. And lo and behold, the perception of the street was already beginning to change just by kind of fairly minor interventions. Next slide, please. So the area was traditionally characterized by a very dense form of Victorian development, mixed use, pubs, restaurants, theatres, cafes, factories side by side. But due to the war and the development aftermath, the nature of the area changed and became a lot of light industrial workshops and the warehousing, and obviously the roads servicing those were far wider to allow for kind of delivery traffic and so forth. And you'll see in the next slide, please. You'll see here what one of the things that we try to do, because the traffic engineers are understandably nervous about making expensive interventions into the public realm to make changes. But in an attempt to win over more carriageway width for pedestrians as opposed to vehicles, we came up with a system which can be relatively cheaply installed and taken away once the pilot is over, and the traffic counts and pedestrian experience has been recorded. Next slide, please. There it is in close-up. Next slide, please. So that was the kind of road infrastructure, if you like. The rail infrastructure presents an altogether different level of challenge. This is the main line into London Bridge. The length of it means that it traverses 3 bids, and I think one of the most heartening things that came out of this so far is that the 3 bids have actually collaborated together to tackle the scale of this particular challenge. So borrowing from the kind of High Line in New York, our project is called the Low Line. The viaduct, which is the biggest structure in London, matter of fact, is above ground and is still operational. It's below ground for much of its length north of the river, but in south of the river, barriers were such that they just put it above ground, and as you can see, it cuts communities in half. So what can you do about that? Next slide, please. So you can see at ground floor level, the environment is quite degraded, and it's not an inviting prospect to walk along. But there is this way leaf along the whole length of it, which is there for servicing the arches. And here was an opportunity to punch a new, relatively pollution-free passageway through into the centre of the city. Next slide, please. And the first thing I kind of put in on the map was a kind of branding exercise, which brought home the heritage, acted as a wayfinding, and gave it a personality, which so people can find these rather attractive discs along the whole length of the line. Next slide, please. And we've also used it as an opportunity to look at biodiversity. We've done a lot of planting along the length of it. We've commissioned an international competition to come up with an ecological strategy for the line, which is now published. Next slide, please. And another attempt to kind of humanize it, if you like, is through events and festivals. And this kind of shows it. This is kind of almost like crossing the Berlin Wall, isn't it? You know, this kind of idea that you can find your way through, and communities either side of the wall, sorry, of the viaduct, can actually have fun together. Next slide, please. And of course, what we're now seeing, very much as we're finding in the arts in New York there, that the commercial development industry is picking up on this. And there are, even in Bankside, which is a part of the length, you know, 3 or 4 significant schemes of scale, this being one of them, which are being attracted to the new refurbished arches. And that's both great news and the source of the concern that we may lose some of those more intimate and community kind of uses that give it its special flavor. So in order to counter that really, next slide please, the bids have become landlords in their own right. So they've taken a lease on a number of arches, this being one of them. And as you can see, the interior is kind of rather dank and leaky from the infrastructure above. We've been successful in winning substantial funding from central government to refurbish these, and this scheme is actually on site and will be completed at the end of May. And we'll eventually provide, next slide please, both the kind of venue that is available for community use at an affordable rate, which is quite difficult in our part of London to provide, because obviously hotels and venues are probably over the kind of budgets for most community voluntary events. And also, next slide please, through a kind of quite neat and financially efficient model, these galvanized pods are put in, so they protect from the water that drips from the ceiling, and also have the added advantage that once the lease on an arch is surrendered, because a more valuable demand is placed on the leaseholder. So if they've got to move, these pods can simply be picked up and sent to the next arch that becomes available. So this is co-working space and maker space.
Peter, you have 1 minute left. So
good. Next slide, please. Thank you very much.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much. I have some questions for you, but I think that we will go straight from you to Derek, and then we can wait for a while with the questions. So Derek, now you have heard a presentation of BIDs from New York and from London. So the floor is yours. Nice to see you.
Thanks,
again.
Magnus. Thank you very much, and glad to be here all the way from Cape Town, sunny Cape Town, I must say. Very nice weather today. I'm going to talk about city improvement districts. We call them city improvement districts in South Africa, CIDs, CIDs. Just give you some background, and then I'll come back to the CID I manage, for example. Just some background on the COVID situation in South Africa. We currently at level 1, which is our lowest level, which I told Erika just now is that, our curfew hours are much shorter. Curfew is only from 12 o'clock midnight till 4 o'clock in the morning. Restaurants are open, pubs are open, but there are restrictions, but at least business is getting back on its feet. City improvement districts, someone asked me just now, do we work from home? Do we work from the office? We are 100% at the office, even during level 5, which is our top level, most dangerous level, if you can put it like that. We were in the field as we are essential workers. Coming back to Cape Town City Improvement Districts, quick background before we start. Cape Town currently has 47 city improvement districts, growing every year. They started out in 2000. We started out in 2000 with the first one. And basically 20 years later, we've got 47. Our city improvement districts in Cape Town is a mixture between commercial, purely commercial property, purely residential, and then the mixture between the two of them. All CIDs, we concentrate on the same issues, which is clean, safe, and caring. Clean is normal cleaning of public spaces, cleaning of the roads. Public safety is actually visibly patrolling the streets, public places. And then the caring is where CIDs that have the budget for it. For example, my CID that I have a dedicated social upliftment team. A social worker, qualified social worker, she's got a team of field workers, and their job 24 hours a day is to work with the homeless people to try and get them off the streets or into job rehabilitation programs. The last difference I would say between what I've seen in the States, what I've seen in the UK and in Europe as well, is that our CIDs in South Africa are very operationally minded, operationally inclined. For us, it's about getting our hands dirty. That's what it's about. I wish I could have the nice to haves as Kati has in Bryant Park, for example. Interesting, and this might be interesting and I'd like to hear Kati's view on this later in terms of percentage of her budget. I spend about 55% of my annual budget I spend on public safety. On cleaning, that's cleaning the urban environment, I spend about 12%. I only have 1.5% of my budget, annual budget, for marketing. And social upliftment, which is dealing with or caring for the homeless, it's only 1%. In the ideal world, it should be completely different. It should be probably social upliftment should be double figures. But that's, as I always say, that's the nature of the beast. Erika, we can start. Okay, next one. This is the South African version. I want you just to make sure that we understand it. So in South Africa, a CID, a City Improvement District, we provide over and above services, public safety, cleaning, and social services to those already provided by the city, and in this instance, the City of Cape Town, and our national police services. That's very important. We'll come to that later. It is a statutory body established under the CID bylaw of the City of Cape Town. So the City of Cape Town has its own CID bylaw and its own policy. I have my own board of directors, which is interesting. They're all property owners within my CID. The CIDs in South Africa are all non-profit companies, which means I don't have to pay the taxman any tax on investments, which helps a lot. And we're independent of the city. I think, well, Kati also spoke about that. So all that the city does is they check our budget, they pay over our fees, our levies, as we call it, every month. Kati said once or twice a year, I think. Ours gets paid over by the City of Cape Town every month. CIDs are managed, for example, I manage my CID, I'm the Chief Operations Officer, and I report to my chairman of the board. We are funded by additional rates collected from ratepayers by the city and then paid over to the CID. The question was also just now directed to Kati. I think in Sweden, if you go down the routes of bids, you stay away from trying to collect your own bid levy. It's a nightmare. Rather let the city collect it, because I know for the next 5 years of my business plan, my budget is set for 5 years. Whether someone pays or not, the city guarantees that I get my funding every month. That's very, very important, because no service provider that I will appoint will sign a contract if he knows that I'm going to struggle to get my money in from levy payers who don't pay. We are a 5-year term as approved by the city council. And interesting here, Peter, maybe for you, we not necessary for a ballot after 5 years. All that I have to do, and I'm currently busy with that, is my business plan. I'm drafting a business plan for the next 5 years, which will be approved by full council. And that then commences next year, the 1st of July. And as I said there, Cape Town has 47 CIDs currently. Next one, Erika. There's my vision and mission. I mean, that's simple, straightforward: to create and maintain a clean, safe and caring urban environment for all, to improve and upgrade the public environment for the benefit of all. Next. This is the aim of the Fuertaka Road Corridor City Improvement District. Maybe I should just stop there quickly. For those people that have been in Cape Town, the CID I manage is about 20 kilometers outside of Cape Town. Well, it's still part of the city of Cape Town. It's in a city called Bellville, although we're one big metropole. Bellville is the second CBD. It's commonly known as the second business improvement district of Cape Town. So it's just as important as the CBD of Cape Town. So my aim, and this is what I have to do, is we reduce crime by proactive visibly patrolling 24 hours a day. We'll come to it just now in terms of my public safety officers. I changed the word. Everyone was talking about security officers. And about 2-3 years ago, I decided to change that title of, oh, he's a bid security officer. I gave them something, I gave them a step up, if you can want to call it that, is I call our officers, and they are known now as public safety officers, PSOs, because that's their job. They protect the public. We create a clean public environment, so daily cleaning of streets and public spaces 7 days a week. In terms of the visible patrolling, policing, or public safety officers, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Our offices basically never close. Third point, our aim is to seek, rehabilitate, and provide jobs for the homeless by the shelters and NGOs that we work with in our area. We identified certain shelters and NGOs in our area that we work with to try and get as many homeless people either into shelters or reunited with their families, or create jobs via these shelters or NGO partners. This is very important for people in Sweden. It's a fact in Cape Town that property values increase in cities. That's a fact, because you now have a, dare I call it, a mini city or a mini municipality. So property values increase in city improvement districts. And also very important, and this is for if there are any municipal officials of Stockholm or wherever listening, this increases the rate space of that city, because once property values increase, the city, through its rate space, gets more money in terms of rates and taxes. That's a win-win for both. And then we support the promotion of the CID as a clean, safe environment to live, work, study, and invest in. Next. The legal process, I was asked just to say how we do it in Cape Town. Before a city is established, the city does not get involved in the process of setting up a CID. Very important. They're not allowed to. It has to come from businesses in the area or residents if it's a residential CID. It's basics, forming a steering committee, but you have to have seed funding, because you've got to do a lot of things. I mean, you have to advertise, you have to have public meetings. So you have to get big businesses that will put in seed funding. In Cape Town, a perception survey must be held. Do you want a CID? Yes or no? Is the area safe? Yes or no? Is the area clean? Yes or no? Then you draw up a business plan. We have to host, and this is according to the bylaw of the City of Cape Town on City Improvement District, is we have to host 3 public meetings. In terms of commercial property owners, and in my CID that I manage, which is, by the way, probably the largest CID in South Africa and probably one of the largest SIDs in the world. It's big. It's quite, sometimes I always tell people it's too big, but you have to obtain a 50+1 vote for commercial property owners for the SID to continue, or in terms of if it's just purely residential, it's 60% plus 1 vote. Then the application goes to the City of Cape Town. There's an objection period. Of course, you're going to have people saying, and this is, I think, all over in the world, is, oh, why should I pay extra levy to the CID? I expect the city or the municipality or the authorities to do everything. I always tell people those days are past. This is about forming public-private partnerships for the good of everyone. Then it's voted on by full city council. An interim board is appointed. My interim board appointed me, and then I appoint the service providers. And then we work on this financial year of the city, which is the 1st of July. So my financial year is exactly the same as that of the City of Cape Town. Next. My public-private partners, and this is very important, we work hand in hand, literally 7 days a week. I have city officials, policing staff, everyone come into our offices if they want something, if they need us a favor, if they want to watch our CCTV camera system for footage or something. Our offices are open to the city, to all these partners. So at the City of Cape Town, very important, I work with, or my CID works with the traffic department, with law enforcement, and our own Metro Police. For example, we've got 77 CCTV cameras in my CID area, privately owned by the CID. We put them up, we paid for them, and it's open to anyone for the police to please come and view footage if you need. City of Cape Town, other departments, very important. We work with the roads department, with health, with cleaning, parks, social services. You know, sometimes roads department officials will phone us and say, Derek, there's a pothole, for example, on that corner. Can you possibly just go have a look for us, confirm for us, and let us know if it's there, yes or no? Those are the small things. We do it. We are the eyes and ears. I always tell my staff and to everyone listening is, you know, we are the eyes and ears of the City of Cape Town on the streets in that specific area. And then provincial government, Department of Community Safety, Social Services are our partners. And then in South Africa, for those that in the know, is that we have a national police force and then a metro police force. So City of Cape Town has its own police force within the city, but on national level, we have the South African National Police Services. They report to the minister, which reports to the president. We work very closely with them as well, with the community police forums, with our neighborhood watches, and then of course with our shelters and the NGOs in terms of social upliftment. Next. Economic benefits of the CID, and I think this is maybe for interest for the city officials of Stockholm or Sweden, wherever. It's clean and safe. If an area is clean and safe, businesses will follow. And this is what cities need to understand. If it's not clean and safe, businesses will not go to that specific area and they will leave. Capital flight. Job creation, because it's clean and safe. We spoke about this just now. CID levy payers have their own dedicated resources 24 hours a day. That's who we are. I always tell people, you know, since I started in 2002, I was appointed as first the security manager and then as the chief operations officer of the Central City Improvement District, which is the CBD, Central Business District in Cape Town, before I got transferred all over to where I am now, is that since that day, literally my phone has not been off once. My staff know that their phones are on 24 hours a day. People phone us 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. These are the people that pay our salaries. These are the people that depend on us to provide a service. So they have their own, as I said just now, they have their own mini municipality, which is us. Property values increase, that's economic benefit to the city. Rate base for city increases due to the above, so which means your property value increases, which means the city charges more rates, so it's more income for them. And then, of course, no bureaucratic red tape from our side. If someone phones us, which they did this morning, and said, we had a bit of storm last night, and said, a tree has fallen over, and it's not to badmouth the officials, but I can promise you within half an hour, that tree was out the road. I instructed my staff, remove the tree from the road, and it's open. If we had to go through the city of Cape Town, and this is unfortunately any city in the world, it will take maybe a day or two to get there. Next. I think this would be interesting, and maybe this gives you an idea what SIDS do South Africa in Cape Town. As I said, we are very hands-on. We concentrate a lot on operational issues, hands-on, getting our hands dirty, as I call it. So just for the 2 months of February and March this year, we had 18 citizens arrests. So I know I'm going to get probably questions. I always get questions, especially from European partners, is can you arrest people? Calls received via our control center. So the SID has a 24-hour dedicated telephone line for SID levy payers, for people that pay the levy, to call us in terms of anything. Either tree has fallen over, or the intersection, there's an accident, or the robot is not working, or any issue. There's illegal dumping. So 2,000 calls in 2 months that we attended to. Incidents attended to 8,000. And these people will say, wow, 8,000 incidents. Now this is from these calls above to any other incident that my staff, myself, or our public safety officers see on the streets. So for example, where our public safety officers gets out the vehicle and goes to a person and said, excuse me, you just littered, please pick it up. So that's logged as an incident. In my SID, we have our own patrol vehicles. That's the kilometers traveled by these vehicles. They 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We remove graffiti. And the next big thing for us is litter collected. I mean, in 2 months, this is not something to brag about. I always tell people in my area, but 100,000 kilograms of litter collected by the CID. And I always tell people, imagine if the SID was not there, this is over and above that which is collected by the city of Cape Town. So imagine if a bid was not there, all this litter would still be on the streets. And then combined police crime prevention operations, 36, where we actually work hand in hand with our police forces. Next.
Derek, you have 1 minute left.
Okay. Operational resources, these are my staff in terms of especially public safety, in terms of cleansing. So those are the people. These aren't my permanent staff. These are contracted. And by the way, Magnus, you know this, we contracted to Securitas, which is a Swedish company. So next slide, please. These are our policing vehicles, our public safety vehicles. They're on the roads 24 hours a day. People know them. Next. Our officers, fully kitted. Next. That is our 24-hour CCTV control center funded by the bid. Next. Our cleaners, very distinctive in the yellow uniform so that everyone can see them. Next. And then finally, what I always tell people, you know, the days of expecting the authorities to tend to minor issues are long gone. Mm. Let's attend to these there and then and get the job done. Mm. Don't expect the city to come and pick up empty cans on your street. Those days are long gone. Get the city to do it. That's one of the advantages. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek. And that was a good way to summarize your presentation. Those days are long gone. Also interesting to hear that 55% of your amount is into public safety. You said 12% into sanitation and 1.5% marketing and 50% homeless. Maybe we should ask if Kati right away have some, and also Peter, if you could respond to this. Kati?
I don't have the exact percentages handy, but we do spend a large part of the biggest part of our budget is on staffing, sanitation, office staff, security. Some are hourly people. So we don't get to do much marketing, and we don't do any social services, which we used to, and it was a little bit challenging. So we no longer do that, but I can definitely see the need. I wish we had more of that.
The bankside bid is about 2 million per annum, I suppose, turnover. In terms of security, there's a team of what we call ambassadors or rangers, and then in terms of there's also until fairly recently a subsidy for police officers, where half the wages of dedicated police officers were being paid. And then there's a cleansing team of about 7 or 8 people, and environmental maintenance. And between those two services, there's probably not far off 50% of the global budget being expended.
Okay, thank you very much, and especially thanks to you, Derek, for your presentation here last. And Erika, from a Swedish point of view, what do you think? You work with this on a daily basis here in Sweden, in Helsingborg, in Stockholm, and in some other places. What are your thoughts from these 3 presentations?
Well, it's been very, very interesting, very inspiring to listen to all of you, as always. And of course, here in Sweden, we do work with bid-inspired models, you could say, and it is a big and growing interest for this model and this way to work, and to work with public-private partnerships and to manage public space in that way. So it's very interesting to follow this development. And of course, we haven't come yet to where you are. And we don't have the bid legislation, of course. So what you said, Kati, about the voluntarily based BIDs, yeah, we can relate to that, and to that it's a lot of hard work involved with getting stakeholders on board. So that's a challenge, I think. And we do have an ongoing conversation in Sweden about legislation and about models to move forward. And I think it's interesting to listen to all 3 of you and to get 3 different models, really. And you do work in slightly different ways, even though like the concept of bid is similar, of course. But here we also have to find our own model and find ways to move forward that work in a Swedish context, of course. I think we already have, of course, learned a lot from your work, and we are looking at what you do closely. And I think something that we need to do more perhaps here is to talk about the benefits. And I think we're getting more knowledge about this, and we're seeing these examples that you shared with us today, international examples of the effects from this work. And also in Sweden, we start to see results. And that's the best argument to get more property owners, more stakeholders, more municipalities on board. So I think that's something we need to talk about more, the value. And as I think you said, Kati, as well, that this is not just about paying. And I think, Peter, you talked about this as well, that this is about investing in something and it's about creating value actually together. And I think we need to find ways to show that and to make more stakeholders, more property owners see this kind of work in that way.
I think just interesting from my point of view. Lovely to see you again, Derek, incidentally. the thing about, do people want to pay? Yes, when the bills go out, we get the call, and what's this about? We don't want to pay, and so forth. But although sometimes this 5-year renewal is a bit of a curse, it does give a really good litmus test to see where the public mood is. And what we're finding, of course, is that bids are being, by a vast majority, being renewed. The successful renewal rate runs in the 90%. And whilst the formula in the UK is on tenants, we are having property owners wanting to play an active part. There's legislation to make that possible on a kind of mandatory level. But even before that, a lot of property owners are investing voluntarily into their bids, which is a sign that they recognise the benefits, I think.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. If you, to start with, Kati, could say some words about how do you restart now after post-COVID? I mean, can you say something about the situation for the BIDs post-COVID? Will you work in some new ways, or yeah, Kati?
Like Derek said, we were an essential service, so we never stopped. Our what everyone else calls safe and clean, our sanitation and security was always out there. April and May of 2020, it was mostly a barren. No one was out in the streets or in the park. Last summer, things picked up a little bit. We do have a mostly office and shopping area. It's not really residential area. There's a few residences, but that's really why the area hasn't been as busy. So many people are working from home. Since the vaccine eligibility has really increased in the last month or two, we're really seeing things pick back up here. So this summer we are trying to act as if we are back in 2019. We are full speed ahead, doing as many programs as possible. We do have some restrictions about distancing and wearing masks, but it really will only affect our major events. We used to hold movies where 5,000 people would come and sit on the lawn, and we will probably have 200 to 700 people in that same space. It'll be actually a gated experience. You have to book a ticket in advance. Really, that's from the event side, but on the day-to-day, you can come to the park, it's open. We have, you have to wait 6 feet apart when you're in the bathroom line or in the food kiosk line. But now speaking about our retail partners, they need people to come back and to shop again and to experience. I think the culture of that is going to change a bit. Not sure how. So we are here to support them and just make sure that we're ready for people to be back in the area.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that these so-called black swan events have become a bit too regular for them to be called black swan events. We had the financial crisis. Lots of the bids in Wales have been subject to this kind of flooding and environmental problem that's been hitting them. And then we had terrorism. The Bankside bid had two terrorist attacks. One you probably remember on Borough Market. And then we've had COVID, and everything that's meant. And I think we're doing some research on what makes places resilient. And of course, all across the Western world, we've seen community assets kind of downplayed, if you like, through the years of austerity, haven't we? And we've been working on a kind of thin margin, which it kind of broke in some places, I think, in some communities due to these kind of pressures. And Derek's got his workforce there, and I don't know if it's the same elsewhere, but it was bids who were in the front line of food banks. It was bids who were in the front line of getting PPE out. It was bids in the front line of getting stickers on pavements and all those kind of things. And you know, that huge atrocity we had in Borough Market, where there was literally a 500-meter cordon around the whole area. You know, the police were drawn very, very thinly, and police from across the city were drawn in to supplement that, and of course had no real knowledge of the locale. And luckily, our ambassadors team and other people were redeployed to fill those gaps. So I think BIDs are a very, very flexible asset base for any city to think about when these inevitable crises seem to come along with increasing regularity.
And Derek, from a South African point of view, Cape Town, post-COVID?
Yeah, we, as I said, as Kati also said, is that we have been working as normal. And it's true that Peter says, we've filled in during COVID when many officials worked from home, which sometimes I get angry about. Am I allowed to say that? Because they supposed to be there for the public. We fed, I don't have the figures, but we fed thousands and thousands of people in my area every single day. All our staff went in. We actually handing out food parcels. We went around the city in my area getting food parcels from shelters, from NGOs, and people knew, poor people that didn't have anything to eat or for their children actually knew every morning and every afternoon, come to the BID certain area and you'll get fed. And that was done by our BID. So yeah, as Peter says, you know, we filled in. I mean, if it wasn't for us, and I'm still actually thinking about this, if it wasn't for the BID to keep the streets clean, to do the basic services, we would have had problems. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a lot of it in South Africa, and you know what I always tell people, you can't hide the facts, is poverty. We've got to use, we really have poverty. And our unemployment is sky high. So yeah, during COVID, it was bad. But this is, once again, this is where BID stepped in and assisted our partners like the city of Cape Town, like municipalities. So it's all about partnerships, working together.
Thank you, Derek. I agree with Erika. It's very inspiring to listen to you and to see what we can do here from a Swedish point of view. But Erika, you have 1 minute to make some final points and before we end this seminar.
I don't know if I need to make any more points. I feel like there's been a lot of great points making already. But no, I don't know. I think it's very inspiring again, as you said also. And yeah, I am thinking about this concept that you mentioned, Derek, the mini government. I think that's maybe a good way to think of a BID or a platssamverkan that we talk about here in Sweden, to make this like mini government that isn't really supposed to replace the government, of course, but to be in a partnership with the government and with the private sector to make the service and the management and the security and everything better, and to reach a new level. So yes, that's my final point, I guess.
What a great final words from you, Erika, and a good summarize of the seminar. So from my behalf, I want to say thank you to all of you, and I can't wait to be able to see you again in Cape Town, in London, in New York, or maybe here in Stockholm in 2022 for a conference. So thank you very much, and hope to see you soon again. And stay safe, Kati and Peter and Derek. And thank you everyone for watching.